Welcome to today's video. Today I'm going to be talking about all my favorite makeup releases that have launched so far in 2024. I started keeping a list this year. I did a video like this last year, but I was doing most of it from memory. And because I do speed reviews every month, I was able to pull out my favorite products from those speed reviews to really keep track of what my favorite products were this year. So I wanted to share those with you guys. These are really just based on my personal preferences. I have been loving like shimmery blushes, really radiant blushes this year, so you're gonna see quite a few of those. I feel like there is a pretty good mix between drugstore and high-end. I would say in certain categories, drugstore definitely killed it. So I do show you guys cutaways of me applying most of these products so that you can see them in action. If this is the first time to my channel, I would love to see you guys subscribe so you can stick around. I will be doing a worst beauty launches of 2024 coming next, so I hope you stay tuned. You guys, let's get into the best of the beauty according to me so far in 2024. Because last year I ended up doing a best of beauty sometime in December. There was actually some releases that came out at the very end of the year last year that I'm actually including in this video because they were like right at the end. Here's a couple of stains. And actually I think there's only 3 of them. So I'll let you know which ones they were, but all of these should still be available for sale. And additionally, I'm going to be linking the shades and the products in the description box. So in case you guys are interested in checking anything out, I will include my links. Most of them are affiliated. So if you do decide to purchase any of these products, it does help my channel. But let's get into it, starting off with eyes. So I did a dedicated video to these. So these were a re-release, and these were ones that came in the very end of December. These are from Pat McGrath. These are the Chroma Luxe eyeshadows. I think she launched these with some collections, probably like the Star Wars collections originally, and then she took them away because those were limited edition collections and then brought them back in December in a bunch of new shades, but also like not with the Star Wars packaging sticker, just with the normal sticker. Initially, I did say that there are comparable formulas on the market from Wear It Beauty. These are $35, I think they retail for, but there's something about these that are super special. In fact, my favorite shade is Midnight Temptress, which is the purple shade. The one that I'm putting on is Copper Siren. And I thought I would put on Copper Siren today because I wear it the least, but Midnight Temptress is gorgeous all on its own. And I'm really not somebody who likes to wear like deeper purple single shadows on my eyes, but something about this formula and something about this shade is just fabulous. They did have a really strong scent to them when I first opened them. I'm sure it was like the binding oil. It smelled really funny. Since then, that smell has dissipated since I did that video, so I am pleased to announce that. But these go on like silk. These are so easy to apply. I just put them on with my finger and I buff out the edges and I'm literally done. These are some of my favorite singles in my entire collection, but these were absolutely a standout product for me for 2024. I kept thinking about these. I've kept reaching for these. I really enjoy the simplicity of the formula and how they perform. What I find with singles is they're not always so easy to blend the edges. Sometimes you get them on and they're a little bit trickier to work with. And ideally singles are like, put them on and go. And sometimes they just aren't. Some require a little bit more maintenance than that, and some of them don't blend perfectly. Sometimes they'll stick to the eyes great, but they just don't blend out the edges, so it makes it a little bit trickier to get the look that you're really looking for. These don't do that. I would get so many more in different shades of these. I liked them so much. The next thing that really stood out to me was a release from Ulta Beauty. This is the Whipsy Eyeliner Corrector. I picked this up with a bunch of other Ulta Beauty products. I think they had like a summer collection that came out sometime in January, maybe February. I got this on a whim. I wasn't looking for it. It was just a new release and I thought this would be something that if it worked would be really useful. This thing works perfectly. I have made so many mistakes with my eyeliner, just like winging it out or really anything anywhere. This thing cleans it up like perfectly. Like I don't know how it does it, but it does it. It always looks great. It doesn't matter if the liner is still wet. It doesn't matter if the liner is fully dry. It cleans up exactly where you put it. It will leave some of the product like on the little brush tip applicator, and so you kind of have to like wipe that off once you're done cleaning up the spot that you're looking to clean up. But man, this thing works exactly how it's supposed to. It's come in super handy and I use this thing all the time. Let's move on to color correctors and concealers. I have such a little tiny collection of these things, like in each category. These are genuinely like my favorite performing products of this year. So each of these are a very curated selection. I want to talk about from the drugstore, the Pro Fix Stick from NYX. I don't love the formula in every one of these shades. I have purchased one that's more of a concealer shade, and then I purchased this one, which is in the shade Pink. And so it's a color corrector instead of like just a concealer in a cream stick formula. This thing is amazing for actually getting into like the inner corner here where I tend to get pretty blue and sometimes pretty dark, and it's often an area that I typically miss when I'm doing concealer. This fits in there perfectly. It's a super creamy formula. It's not heavy. It doesn't make anything I put on top of it look super heavy. It blends out perfectly. Conversely, like its counterpart, the one that comes in like the concealer color, that was really heavy. Like it looked cakey under my eyes. It creased. This one does not do that in the inner corner. It does not do that under the eyes. I think this is just a creamier formula in the pink shade than it is in like the concealer shade, which I think I do have the concealer shade also. I don't know if I've decluttered it completely yet, but it's definitely not going in this video. This thing just turned out to be something I didn't know that I needed in my collection. It performs perfectly and it gives me an edge in the inner corner of my eye where I typically miss, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think that one specifically is like tremendous, especially if you do the same and like forget to do like the inner part of the eye. One that's a liquid form is the Hideaway Brightening and Hydrating Under Eye Serum Concealer from KARIM in Dawn. Mine's in Dawn. This actually might come in different shades, but this one in Dawn I think is pink where the other ones are not. I have never met a color corrector that was as lightweight and serumy as this that still did a good job. I have tested other formulas that were like this in the past, probably even last year we saw some come from the drugstore that just didn't do anything for me. This was the first one that actually really brightened, really color corrected. I could still lay concealer on top of it and it didn't look too heavy. It blends out perfectly. It lasts a good amount of time. This is a damn good product. I generally used to stay away from color correctors for the most part because everything I laid on top of them just looked too heavy. This is very serum-like, so it blends in perfectly and completely dries down. It doesn't remain tacky like the Becca color corrector that everybody loved for so long. If you've ever struggled with a color corrector doing similar things, you guys, you have to check this out. This is so good. I love this and I use this all the time. Like I said, nothing I put on top of it ever makes it look too heavy. I lay concealer on top of this every single time I wear it and it never creases on me. Fantastic product. The only concealer that I would consider having been like a bang up product for 2024 is the concealer from Refi, and this one is in the shade 04. The reason that this stands out to me is not only the formula, but this is the first concealer that's called itself cool that's actually been a very, very cool shade. I have a cool undertone, I think, or at least I've been told, and I always find that products that even call themselves neutral tend to pull a little bit warm on me. This is the first concealer that's been cool toned that I have actually loved. I've heard a lot of people say that they liked the Rose Ink concealer because they said it was really cool toned, but I didn't like that formula at all. I thought it was thick and crepey, but this is super thin and it's very brightening. I don't have a concealer that brightens as well as this one does. I don't have one that is as cool toned as this one is. This is such a thin serum formula. It's beautiful under the under eyes and it actually brightens without looking like noticeably bright or just extra creepy looking. Sometimes later concealers on me can tend to brighten in the wrong way because they're such a thick or more full coverage product. This is perfectly medium coverage. I lay this on top of the KARIM in today's cutaway. I've laid it on top of the KARIM color corrector so many times. It works on top of everything. This is such a unique product to me. I have other concealers that I love, but this just does something different that none of my other concealers do. All right, we're moving on to base products, and I have so many foundations that launched this year that I actually really enjoy. Honestly, the drugstore stole it, I think, in foundation releases this year. I feel like they launched more anyway, but they definitely stole the category in base products for me. The first one I want to talk about is the Wet n Wild Bare Focus Niacinamide Skin Tint. So it's supposed to have hyaluronic acid, 5% niacinamide, and peony extract. It's supposed to have up to 24-hour hydration. Mine is in too deep of a shade for me, you guys, just so you know. And this one is in light, but it's in warm. And I think I bought this on Amazon, so I messed up picking up the shade. It comes with a dropper style, but the dropper actually works. The formula is very liquidy and thin. It's like perfectly light, medium buildable coverage. It gives a nice, like, hydrated look to the skin. If you guys don't know this, I have combo skin and it is super humid where I live in Florida. So a lot of times skin tints or things that aren't mattifying do not last a very long time on me. And so they're generally something that I'll just declutter because they're not made for my skin type, where I feel like this actually is. This is something that doesn't slip off immediately. I get a good day's wear out of this. And also it's super beautiful on the skin. Very lightweight. Like I said, just perfectly medium coverage that doesn't slip off, and it gives me a healthy, hydrated look. It's beautiful. It's not dry. It's not greasy. It's kind of in the perfect middle. And I love when skin tints can work for my skin type because I don't have a lot that work for me, at least not very well, and at least not super long. So I definitely highly recommend this product from Wet n Wild, and it's super affordable too. All right, I'm gonna keep going with the drugstore, but this is not a skin tint. This is the Performer Foundation from About Face. I think this released pretty early. This was somewhere in like January, maybe February. I really enjoyed this. It's again, very light to medium coverage foundation. It's buildable. It's not too heavy. It's another product that I feel like works for my skin type, where I just don't find products that are luminous or it's just not super mattifying in general. Just it don't work for me. And so I always try and pare down my collection of those types of products, but there's just something about this. It just looks super skin-like. It's very healthy. It doesn't slip off in 5 minutes. It smooths out my skin. It's great. That is such an easy thing for me to say when reviewing a product, that it didn't do anything extraordinarily negative on my skin. It just looked beautiful. That's all it's supposed to do. It's a lighter weight formula too. Like, it's nice and easily blendable. There's just every little box with this is checked, honestly. And it comes in a great shade range. The only thing that I would say with the product packaging is that the sides tend to get super tugged on this doe foot applicator because the opening isn't that big. So it's a little bit tricky, but also it kind of yanks on the doe foot. You can kind of see it like on the side where it pulls some of the product off. So that over time, like doing this motion, probably is going to mess up this doe foot applicator, I could imagine, but otherwise it's just like such a good product in a great shade range. We're keeping up with the drugstore. The e.l.f. Soft Glam Satin Foundation, 2 shades here, and I'm a combination of both. I have 13 and 20. I love the satin finish foundation. That's a $6 foundation in a glass bottle. This is $8 in a squeezy tube, but honestly the formulas are pretty dang similar. This one is more of a whipped texture, so it's not like a super runny formula. I know e.l.f. has a tendency to do like thicker weight, kind of whipped textured foundations. Every foundation I've ever tried from e.l.f. has been in that kind of consistency. So I'm always really hesitant because only the Flawless Satin Foundation has ever worked on my skin, both back when I had really dry skin and even now, where something more mattifying like the e.l.f. Camo CC Cream or the Hydrating CC Cream might be something that would work for my skin type. I don't like them. I think they're overly dry. These ones are not. These are so good. They're the perfect medium buildable coverage. They give you that perfect satin finish. They last a decent amount of time. They're not hard to blend in. They're not dry. Again, just similar to the other two, that they just look perfect on the skin. The difference is this one is a little bit more of a satin finish, where the other two are a little bit more hydrating, but perfect. Perfect from e.l.f. I'm glad that they came out with this. I really enjoyed this formula. I don't love it more than the Satin Finish Foundation because that lasts a little bit longer than these do on my combo to oily skin, but they're great. And in fact, I think they could probably work for people with dry skin because they're not overly dry. I would never ever recommend the Camo CC Cream or the Hydrating CC Cream. I'm sorry if you guys love it. I hate those. I hate those foundations. They are so thick, so heavy on my skin. It must just be that I have like the tiniest pores ever. That product just like lifts off of my face, never sinks in, and just, I don't know, it looks cakey and gross. These do not. These are fabulous, even for me with combo skin. All right, last one from the drugstore. I loved this. No one is talking about this. It's the Revolution Skin Silk, the Luminous Serum Foundation in F4. This one is so similar and reminiscent of the Laura Mercier Weightless Foundation. I will pop up a picture here. It's basically the equivalent of that. It's like a weightless feel on the skin. You can't feel this at all. It's so liquidy and lightweight. It blends in perfectly. It's like one of those foundations that I grab when I'm like testing new blushes because it comes off so easily, it goes on so easily, but it also dries down to give you this satin finish. Even though it's not drying of a formula, it's kind of luminous like on the high points of the face. It's so good. I think this is a dupe to the Armani foundation, but I would say that the consistency here is more like the Laura Mercier foundation because they're that almost warm feeling serum oil on your skin when when you apply it and they blend in, like you can't even feel it. It's like basically water on your skin. Something lighter than water, but literally like silk basically. Love this freaking thing. Comes in a glass bottle. So good, and it lasts pretty long on my combo skin. Two of my favorite releases. Fave releases of this year. The Urban Decay Face Bond. I have mine in the shade 6, which is Fair Warm. It didn't say that it was warm on Sephora's website, so now I know. I'm a little bit mad when I bought this. It didn't say warm on it. I have combo skin, like you guys know, so I'm usually going for foundations that are a little bit more of a mattifying coverage. This one is like a self-setting product. It's super lightweight. It blends in perfectly. It does self-set. It's almost like kind of a powdery finish when it dries down, but it's not drying on the face. It's pretty long lasting. It smooths out the texture on my face. It sinks in really well. This is such a beautiful product. Love it. I just love it. I think it's probably made more for people with like normal to oily skin, but I don't think the self-setting portion of it dries too quickly, and I don't think it's an overly dry foundation. So even people with dry skin might find a use out of this. I would just lean towards recommending it to those of us who have normal to oily skin, but still like super beautiful, super smoothing on the skin. I think probably my favorite one of all of these is the Supergoop Protectant with SPF 50, and it's PA++++. There is something so freaking beautiful about this. It reminds me a lot of the Dr. Jart and also the Missha Perfect Cover BB cream, but this is better. There's something way more skin-like about this, but also more coverage than either of those, and it doesn't melt off in 5 seconds. Both the Dr. Jart and the Missha, for me, they tend to re-emulsify if I start sweating, where this one doesn't. There's something more satin about this, and it's more coverage than both of those, but you can tell that it's like beads of pigment inside of sunscreen. There's something so freaking amazing about this. This is my favorite product from Supergoop. If like I was ever gonna fall in love with the brand like everyone else, it would be because of this product, honestly. Again, super smoothing. It's like medium coverage. It gives you the SPF 50++++. I know Missha is really popular, and I know that it's a lot less expensive, but honestly, this is just prettier on the skin for me, having combo skin than the Missha. Like I said, I think the Missha re-emulsifies when I start sweating, where this one doesn't. So if you guys are looking for a tinted SPF and you have combo skin, like check it out. Check it freaking out. Let's talk about the bronzers, and then there's one sculpting product that I'm loving this year. So the first one that I want to talk about is the Cloud Paint from Glossier, and this one is in the shade Sail. I love this formula. I feel like we've all loved this formula when it came in the blushes. I don't detect any difference in the formula from the blush formula at all. It blends in perfectly, and it's a perfect neutral tone. It's not too cool, it's not too warm, it never lifts the foundation underneath, it never messes with the powder that I'm wearing underneath. It lasts a really good amount of time, and it's not mattifying. Like, it's a little bit of hydrating, kind of radiant finish, like right in the middle. It's not like glossy or glowy or sticky. I fell in love with this. I love this so much. I feel like not as many people that I've seen talk about this product love it quite as much as I do, but both in formula and in shade, top notch for me, top notch. Again, something no one else talks about, the KVD Good Apple Bronze and Sculpt Balm Duo, and this one is in Fair 100. I really dislike the bronzer in here because it's basically an orange shade, but I have come to love this sculpting shade. It is so good for fair skin. It's so perfectly cool toned. The formula feels super thick, and it feels like it would be super heavy on the skin, but it goes on like powder. It's almost like super silicone based, which makes it like really emollient, but then dries down to like that kind of powdery finish. Something that you would use if you were maybe even trying to like pore diffuse. That's what I feel like this product feels like, kind of like the e.l.f. Poreless Putty Primer. It feels like even like the Supergoop Unseen Sunscreen, like that kind of almost silicone-based feeling formula. It dries down, but it still has a little bit of a luminous finish. So beautiful. I'm gonna end up like panning this because I love it so much, and I'm gonna have this whole thing just over here just not being used. Someone asked me if I could use it as a blush. It's too like flat orange to use as a blush. I have so many more blushes I would rather reach for than this shade, but this sculpting side is so good. I wish this just came by itself. Another one that I have come to love is the Buttermelt Bronzer from NYX. Now these come in so many different shades. I want to say there's like 10 different shades. So you could get one that's more warm toned. You could get one that's even more red leaning. This one in All Butted Up is the one that I gravitate toward because it is a little bit red leaning. It has that little bit of reddish undertone. 9 times out of 10, if I'm going to go for a bronzer that has a little bit of warmth, I'm going to grab ones from my collection that I know bring in a little bit of red pigment than orange. And this one in All Butted Up does that. I do have another one that's more on the warm side. So I don't recommend every shade for every skin tone, but this one in particular is really pretty for fair skin. Formula is really good too. It does have talc in it. I know some of you guys don't like having talc in your products, and I'm not an overly big fan of it either. I really wish they would make it without it. But otherwise, this is a very smooth formula. It can be very pigmented, but I feel like it's also a buildable formula just depending upon how hard you dig your brush in. It lasts a good amount of time. It has this like beautiful sheen to it, and it's 10 bucks. So All Butted Up, highly recommend this shade. If I'm looking for some more warmer toned, maybe even like orangey bronzers, I'm gonna grab for either one of these. I fell in love with the KARIM Sun Drip Skin Boosting Peptide Serum Bronzer, and it only comes in one shade. Another product from KARIM that I really like. There's only been 2 that I've just not been a fan of. Even though this has more warmth to it than not, it's meant to give your cheeks really that sun-kissed glow. The reason I think that I really like it is because it isn't too deep. Even though maybe on the swatch it looks like it, it's a product that you can easily sheer out that doesn't look like super orange on the cheeks while giving you warmth. It blends in perfectly without disturbing the foundation underneath. It lasts a good amount of time, and the texture is just really cool too. It's not like super liquidy. It's kind of a moussier texture, and it has like a little bit of tack to it. It's honestly like the perfect balance of like emollients and tackiness. So it really does like grip to your skin while still leaving your skin looking radiant. It's just a really cool product. Overall, just like the performance of it is really good. It reminds me a lot of the Physicians Formula Butter Glow liquid bronzer. I would say this is like half empty. I think this came out last year. I raved about this. They're honestly very, very similar. I think the Butter Glow bronzer from Physicians Formula is a little less warm than the one from KARIM. So if you wanted kind of a comparable formula, this one from Physicians Formula that's less expensive than KARIM is definitely a recommendation from me. But the KARIM, loving it this year. Now the next one is a very, very warm, like almost orange bronzer. So it's not something that I reach for all the time, but when I'm wearing a color blush like I'm wearing right now, or I really want to bronze up, I really do like this formula. It's the Physicians Formula Mineral Wear Diamond Bronzer, and I have the shade Bronze Gem. I don't think they have that many shades. That's the one downside to Physicians Formula, is that they are very limited in terms of offering shades that work for deeper complexions, but their stuff is usually so good that I wish they'd just get it together and expand the shade range, because they're made for sensitive skin. All of their products are talc free. Overall, they're just usually pretty good quality. Now, even though this is more on the warm side, the formula here is absolutely fantastic. It's like a balmy texture, and it leaves your skin a little bit radiant. It's super easy to apply with pretty much any brush. It's not too emollient. It lasts a good amount of time. One that is super comparable in terms of this like balmy kind of texture is the Makeup by Mario Soft Sculpt Skin Enhancer. And that one you can actually get a very similar formula while having a cooler tone. This one is just warmer than that one. So this is kind of the drugstore equivalent to that formula, just not in terms of shade. So I really, really like this for the formula. I'm willing to make it work for me because I like the formula so much if I'm wearing like a blush this color, because I ended up putting this back on. This is the final bronzer that I'm wearing underneath this blush. So anyway, if you like something a little bit warm, I definitely recommend that formula. Okay, let's move on to my absolute favorite category, blushes. I actually have quite a few that are different finishes, so let's talk about the highlighting blushes that I really enjoyed this year. The first one is the Soft Pinch. I think these are called the Luminous Powder Blushes. I picked up all 6 shades when I did a try on video, and I have decided to declutter the ones that are a little bit too deep, but I would say that there's like 3 shades in total that work for a lighter complexion, someone of a fairer complexion. This one is in the shade Cheek. sheer. I think when these released, everyone was worried about the amount of texture that they would show on the cheeks. I don't find that they overemphasize any texture on my cheeks. They're a really, really smooth powder formula. They go on like butter. They have decent longevity, even though they seem like something that's maybe a little bit lighter in tone. Because the lighter shades are more highlighty than they are more pigmented, I can say that the deeper shades actually are more pigment than they are highlighting. Having tested all 6 of these shades, I think they're perfect though. They have like the perfect amount of sheen without sparkles. They have decent longevity. They're perfect for highlighting blushes, and I don't think they overemphasize the texture that I already have on my cheeks any more so than really any kind of other product that I would put on it, maybe even a highlighter. So yeah, I thoroughly enjoy these. Again, I think all 3 of the lighter shades, I think they're Happy, Cheer, and Joy are probably my favorite 3 of the 6. Another release that I really liked in the highlighting category department was from Fenty Beauty. It's the Hot Cheeks Velour Blush Lighter. This one is in Fresh Peach. I want to say this only came in 2 different shades. This one is different than the Rare Beauty because it's less pigment and it's more gold, and it even has some sparkles in it. So I feel like if you guys aren't into that, I would definitely not recommend this to you. I think though that you can build up the base pigment here the way that it's meant to be, because it's literally a velour blush lighter and not just like a low lighter or a highlighter. And I personally am someone who absolutely loves when it's like a hot pink shade with gold reflection on top. That's something that I personally really like the way that it looks on my cheeks. I would say this is not as smooth as the Rare Beauty formula overall. It does have those gold sparkles in it, where the Rare Beauty is mostly just like sheen, and it's a very soft texture that goes onto the cheeks and it melts into the skin. This one has a tendency to like have that gold reflective sparkles that kind of sit on top of the skin. I personally think it's not too much. I really enjoy it. Again, I dig my brush in pretty hard so I can get a decent base pigment. It is a baked formula, so overall I am really enjoying this product. Now, my personal preferences of liking a blush lighter and something that has like gold sparkles on top of like a hot pink color definitely sway me with this particular product. All right, the final ones in like the blush lighter category, these are actually like highlighters that I use as blushes, but they can be whatever you want to use them for. I do like this formula. These are the low lighters from Danessa Myricks. The pink shade is in Unbothered, and then Low Key is the orange shade. I like the pink shade so much more. I think it's just a little bit more pigmented because these are meant to be highlighters. It's a cream to powder formula. This is no different than her blush. It's just that her blush is super pigmented and these aren't. These are much more of a buildable formula, but because they're cream to powder, I just find that they actually last for being so light on the skin, so they don't fade off immediately. I love the buildability. I love the cream to powder formula. The only thing I would say in like warning you guys as a PSA for these particular products is they don't lay super well on top of a set face. They definitely have a tendency to kind of pill up on top of a heavier powder. So I don't set my face before I put these on. Otherwise, I think they're a 10 out of 10. I enjoyed her blush formula last year when it came out. It was one of my favorite releases, and I don't think these are any different. Just like the sculpting product from KVD, I really like the Good Apple Blush Balm Duo. This one is in Secret Thicket. So the shades here are Hollowed Apple and Hidden Apple. I already explained the formula to you guys. It's no different than Bronze and Sculpt Duo. It's like a moussier texture. It seems like it would be extremely pigmented, but you guys, you can actually really sheer this out. It has a sheer ability that I did not think was possible with this product because it gets intense. This is a intensely pigmented product if you want it to be, and you can also sheer it out if you want it to be. And again, just like this Bronze and Sculpt Duo, this is one of those that locks onto the cheeks. It has almost this like powdery finish, still has a little bit of radiance to it. There's just something so beautiful about this product. Honestly, it looks like it would be so much more pigmented in the pan, and it isn't. And that's partly why I love this product so much, is that you have so much more control over how this looks on the cheeks than you think you do. And also, I love both of these shades. I thought that I would love the lighter toned mauve shade more, but I really like this like kind of a maroonish blush because it doesn't come out too heavy looking on my fair skin. I highly enjoy those, and I don't hear, I feel like really anybody talking about that formula. And just like the bronzer, I love the Buttermelt blushes from NYX. I have 4 shades and I have them all here, and some are shimmering and some are just a flat matte. The one that I'm actually putting on today is Shimmering Coral, so it does have a little bit of sheen to it, but it's very light. It's very, very mild. It's no sparkles. It's just a light sheen inside of the pigment. These, again, just like the bronzers, they do have talc in them, but they are a pretty inexpensive drugstore formula. Another product that I feel like you can get super intense pigmentation out of it, but also has the versatility of being a little bit more lightly pigmented if you go in with a lighter tap of the brush. I love the shimmering finish. They have good longevity and they smell like delicious tropical sunsets. And I love all these shades too. They come in really cool shades. The orange one that I have here is Shimmering Tangerine. It's another shimmer. And then Soft Mauve, this is like a fully matte shade. And I think this is another shimmer. Yeah, Shimmering Rose. Another affordable blush that I highly recommend. This year I definitely got into more of a dewier finished blush, way more than I have in past years. So the next three are all cream and they're all radiant finishes. The first one I want to talk about is from Iconic London. It is the Blurring Blush Stick. And this one is in the shade Daiquiri. When you swatch this, it feels like a cream to powder formula, but when you actually get this to the cheeks and like buff it in super lightly, it leaves like the slightest bit of radiance on the cheeks. And it's such an easy formula to work with. So like, just like it says, Blurring Blush Stick, it bounces in perfectly, doesn't lift anything. It looks very airbrushing on the cheeks. It's a very easy formula to work with. I am kind of obsessed with Iconic London products. The only thing I would say with this is the packaging is super cheap. Iconic London usually does really nice packaging too. So this just feels on the low end for what they do. But the Summer Fridays like blush balm stick that came out last year, I fell in love with, and they discontinued it. And I feel like this is basically the equivalent of that formula. Summer Fridays had a little bit more dewiness than this one does, like just overall, but still like it's a decent replacement. So I hope Iconic London doesn't get rid of this. This is another product I don't feel like anyone talks about. Another one that's a fairly new release, it's the IT Cosmetics Sun Blush. It is Glow with Confidence. This one is in the shade Sunlit 10. They call this a blush plus bronzer. And it may be because all of the shades tend to come out a little bit warm on the cheeks. This is in 95% solid serum, and that's pretty much what it feels like. It's like a whipped but balmy texture. If you dig in pretty hard, it's kind of whipped, but if you just run your finger across the surface, it's more of a serum-like balm. It goes on perfectly. It buffs into the skin beautifully. It has a decent longevity, and it really is a nice radiant finish that I feel like eventually sets down. It is the blush that I'm wearing right now, and it's not too dewy. It has just like the slight bit of radiance. Like, I'm not wearing a highlighter or anything. This is almost completely dry. It's not gonna lift, it's not sticky and icky and weird. This might be one of my favorite blush launches of all the ones that I've been talking to you guys about in terms of like the cream category from this year. Thoroughly enjoy it. And honestly, I haven't fallen in love with an IT Cosmetics product in so long that it's like kind of cool that I really enjoyed that from it. The dewiest of them all is the Kaja Dewy Bar. This one is in the shade Fig Smoothie. Now this one is juicy, very, very juicy. One of the things that I do with this, once I buff it into the skin, is I will let it sit on my cheeks for a little while and I will powder like around the edges to kind of lock down some of the stickiness. I would say this is kind of like the Pixie on the glow sticks. It reminds me a lot of that, except not as sheer. Those Pixie on the glow sticks, everyone I feel like went head over heels for them, but for me they were just too sheer. Even though they were bright shades, I just felt like that they weren't pigmented enough to look really flattering on my cheeks, where I feel like this one is super duper pigmented and you have to be careful. But even if you go in too heavy, you can still buff this out. It's just extremely juicy. And it doesn't dry down as well as the Sun Blush from IT Cosmetics. So if you're looking for something that's radiant and easy to work with, the Sun Blush would definitely be my recommendation over this. But there's just something about a dewy blush that I love. And I love the fact that this is a little bit more pigmented for being a dewy blush product. We are on into the final category. These are lip products, and strangely enough, and I didn't intend for this to happen, all of these are like lip stains. I don't know why, they just did like a really good job with lip stains this year that stood out to me. So the first one I want to talk about is the Pout Tint from Makeup Revolution. I love this freaking thing. It's called Mad About Mauve. It's a very thin lip stain, but it's almost like a very emollient, moussey texture that has shine on top of it. It's like a glossy lip stain. It reminds me a lot of the L'Oreal lip stain bulb things. I never remember the name of it. This is pretty much like the equivalent of that, but less expensive. It gives a decent stain to it. It remains glossy for a super long time. It's not sticky, but it doesn't fade off of your lips very quickly. I love the shade also. I think why this really stands out to me, not just because I think it performs really well, but I think because when I think of lip tints, I think of something that's a little bit more drying. And the reason that I fell in love with the L'Oreal one so much is because it remained glossy while having like the stain underneath. And this product does that really well. But one that does it even better is the Color Fetish Hydrating Lip Stain from Milani. These are not terribly dissimilar. It's just that the stain with the Milani one is so much more intense, but they're very similar in how they perform. They give you this really nice glossy finish to them. The one that I have is in Rose Rising. Again, another shade that I love. This one is a little bit more warm toned than the one from Makeup Revolution in Mad About Mauve, which is a little bit more cool toned and kind of why I like it. I would say that this formula is a little bit thinner than the Makeup Revolution, but aside from that and the fact that the Milani's lip stain is just a little bit more intense than the Revolution one, they're such a similar formula. And honestly, I like them equally. I think both of these products were really good and they were a super standout for me. Not because I'm obsessed with lip stain formulas, honestly just because they performed really well. And then the very final one is from an indie brand. It's from Bella Beauté Bar. It's the Lip Dewy Gloss. It's the one I'm wearing now. This one doesn't have as strong of a stain as the other two initially, but if you leave this on, like I've now had this lip product on for an hour now. And not only is it still like semi-glossy, but it's definitely locked down onto my lips. This one is in the shade Truffles. So the Lip Dewy Gloss is kind of, I think, a deceiving name because it's more like it has shine to it, but it's not sticky, but it's also like a glossy stain is essentially what this is. So if I were to wipe this off right now, it would have stained my lips like way better than if I had just like put it on and then taken it off immediately, the way that I did with the Milani and how much that actually stained. But I love the packaging here. I love that I just fell in love with this product from an indie brand, you know, that wasn't like an eyeshadow, because I've never fallen in love with an indie brand product, again, that just wasn't like an eyeshadow or an eyeshadow palette. So I thoroughly enjoyed this. I would definitely pick up more shades. This is not the only lip product that I picked up from Bella Beauté Bar, but it was the best one. That was all I had for the best of beauty so far. Of all the launches that I've tried in 2024, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Again, if you guys aren't currently subscribed, I hope that you subscribe so you can stick around and also so you can come back to see my worst of beauty for 2024, products that I will recommend you stay away from. I'm out of here for today, you guys, and I hope to catch you all in my next video. Bye, guys.